Well, duck hunting is a $70 million industry in Arkansas, an industry that's tied to the history of our state.
And now that the sun is set on another season, concern is mounting over the future of this sport. And TGV 11 Scott Culver takes us into the blind for a look at the challenges facing this cherished tradition.
Deep inside of the duck blind, watching, waiting, hoping. A practice of patience that's common for the many duck hunters who flock to the flooded rice fields and timberland of eastern Arkansas. But now their patience is being tested more than ever before.
I don't think duck numbers are what they used to be, just by observation alone, just by seeing them with my eyes and seeing them in places they used to be and where they're not there anymore.
Brent Birch literally wrote the book on duck hunting. He knows the problems this storied pastime is facing, and he took us along to see firsthand. You see, Birch has waded the cold waters of these fields for decades, taking advantage of the ideal conditions that bring millions of ducks to Arkansas every year. As much of the country freezes over, the natural state offers the birds their only two needs: a place to sleep and a meal to eat. But the problem now facing ducks and duck hunters alike, our ability to meet those two needs is changing.
Something happens with the habitat itself that changes where the ducks go, but I just don't think we're seeing the numbers. The habitat is better north of us. I don't think that's the only reason. I think part of it is we're not providing the habitat like we used to in the state.
Scientists like Dr. Ryan Askren, who's also a lifelong duck hunter, agree that warmer temperatures north of us don't give ducks much of a need to travel further south to spend their winters here.
If there is a strong warming trend in this region, we definitely could see a shift in ducks further north, which again, that's hard to kind of disentangle from other landscape level changes, but definitely could be impacting migration.
When winter conditions do force ducks to migrate south, they're looking for water. That's historically not been an issue in Arkansas, but that wasn't the case at the beginning of this past duck season when severe drought hung heavy over many hunters, all worried a lack of water would lead us to become a flyover state.
We were very concerned. A lot of the kind of whole region level habitat that's provided is based on rainwater during the fall, and I mean, it was so low that even if people did want to pump water out of like bayous and rivers, there wasn't enough water to flood a lot of these habitats, and that's huge. Obviously, if ducks are coming here and there's not habitat for them, especially once we start hunting them, there's just not much of a reason to stay here.
Fortunately for hunters, record flooding in the Delta midway through the season would eventually ease the droughts, leading to ducks falling into decoy spreads all throughout the Grand Prairie. And while it may sound like problem solved, don't forget the other half of the equation: food.
We're farming earlier and earlier, unfortunately. Rice is a huge food source. We're getting a lot more efficient with farming, which just means there's less and less food for ducks.
I understand farmers have to make a living and they have reasons why they do what they do, but some of that has been to the detriment of the waterfowl.
When ducks aren't eating rice, they're likely eating acorns, and while improved farming techniques are already limiting one of those food sources, it's a practice going back decades that's now hurting the other. For years, bottomland forests have been artificially flooded to create habitat for ducks, and while water is important for ideal duck conditions, scientists have recently learned that too much of a good thing can be a problem.
We're flooding earlier than historically they would have been naturally, and we're leaving water on too long. So the earlier you put water on and the longer you leave it on in the spring starts hurting the health of those red oaks. It can hurt acorn production, and it can also just lead to species composition, tree composition that is less favorable to mallards.
Changes to our climate, enhanced farming practices, and outdated management of Arkansas's natural resources, all factors putting our state's favorite pastime at risk. But hunters and scientists alike agree what's at stake is worth fighting for.
We shouldn't take it for granted. We need to care for these ducks. If we're going to keep them here, we really need to be passionate about managing the habitat well, thinking about, you know, just taking care of them, not overhunting them, providing the food that they need, and providing the rest they need.
There's a bigger window than the 60 days of duck season that we got to take care of the ducks when they're in the state of Arkansas. And I believe that's a big part of our responsibility as hunters and landowners and habitat managers is to to do all we can to help them have all the conditions they need to be good to go back north. So they'll come back next year with babies and more ducks, and it keeps building.
In East Arkansas, Scott Covert, THV 11 News.